Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile 1 discussion. Well, I get sick and miss a couple of weeks of the free seer event, but I'm still sitting around posting on Reddit, and I make a post that causes the price of a fossil to explode. Today, we're going to be talking about Bloodstained Fossils, what they do, why you should know about them, and why they're not quite as expensive as they were back in 3.7, but they're among the most expensive they've been since. The Bloodstained Fossil. This is something that got reworked all the way back in Scourge League 3.16. It used to do something quite different, and now what it does, it has a text corrupted, has a corrupted implicit modifier. What this means is that when you apply a resonator that's got this fossil in it to an item, that item becomes corrupted. Its mods get scrambled because it's a fossil, and fossils always reforge mods like a Chaos Orb does, but it's guaranteed that the corruption grants one of the Vaal exclusive corruption modifiers. So what does this look like if you just use it normally? Let's say that you apply a Bloodstained Fossil onto just a random piece of armor that you pick up off the ground. Well, you're going to end up with a piece of armor with trash mods, but it's going to have one special mod on it, and that is the Vaal Implicit. Normally, this is somewhere in that section of the world between useless and dumpster tier. However, there is a particularly important use case you need to know about because that has caused these fossils to explode in price. Someone has made a build guide to a really intriguing looking build that is a tri-attribute stat stacker. It's a Tornado Shot Mines character. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. It's something that only really works in the free seer event because it's on the Aristocrat ascendancy, and it really needs to be an Aristocrat to work well. Now that build wants to use Widowhail as its bow, which is the unique bow that has a text plus X% to effect of the modifiers that are on your quiver, and X can be in the range 150 to 250%. The reason that it uses this is because the quiver that it uses is the Poised Prism. The Poised Prism rewards you for scaling all three different attributes. So it provides you with an amount of lightning damage, cold damage, and fire damage based upon each of your individual attributes that you've got. This is something that is incredibly good if you can effectively triple it through the use of Widowhail. But you know what else Widowhail can triple? Widowhail can triple the effects of any Vaal implicits that happen to be on the quiver. And one of those Vaal implicits you can get is +1 arrow. Additionally, as well as +1 arrow, you can also get +1 chain, which is also a really good option, but it is the budget one. +1 arrow is the expensive one. And on this particular build, +1 chain is a big step down in power, but it still eclipses anything else that you can get as a Vaal implicit. So that's the Poised Prism. Why have Bloodstained Fossils exploded in price? Well, the first way that you can get yourself a +1 arrow Poised Prism is by just mapping, picking up every Poised Prism that drops and applying a Vaal Orb to it. And on average, about 1 in every 400 Poised Prisms you pick up will end up Vaaling into a +1 arrow one. That's not what I would term very good odds. It's not terrible, but it's not great. However, the other day when I wasn't feeling particularly good, didn't want to play the game, but was still trying to keep up on PathOfExile news, I came across a post someone had made on Reddit about this and how expensive this quiver had become. And I said, hey, you know the best way to make that? It's using tainted Mythic Orbs. Let's start with the entire process. It starts with Bloodstained Fossils, and they're the limiting reagent. So that means that they're the part that's gotten expensive. Even though tainted Mythic Orbs are more important, Bloodstained Fossils are the part that's in shorter supply, and so they end up being the expensive bit. There are two different ways that you can get your hands on a rare Primal Arrow quiver that has this +1 arrows corruption on it. The first one is to just pick up 400 on average Primal Arrow quivers and apply Vaal Orbs to them. So you'd be carrying a whole bunch of Vaal Orbs with you while you map. You add the Primal Arrow quiver onto your loot filter, you pick them all up, and you apply Vaal Orbs to them. The more efficient way uses Bloodstained Fossils. This way, it's 1% rather than about 1/4% because one of the layers of RNG is removed. What is it that you do once you've got one? Well, that is where the Tainted Mythic Orb kicks in. Tainted Mythic Orb has a text unpredictably either upgrades a corrupted item to unique rarity or destroys it. Now, Grinding Games didn't provide any documentation as to how these work, but it's been completely reverse engineered by players. I'll put a link down in the description below to a video that we put out when we worked out exactly how they work. The key thing that matters here though, is that if you've got a Primal Arrow quiver and you apply a Tainted Mythic Orb to it, it needs to be corrupt for this to work, it's about a 40% chance for that to upgrade to the Poised Prism and about a 60% chance for it to be deleted. And when that happens, it will remember any Vaal implicits that are on it. So if you do get your hands on a rare quiver that's corrupted to have +1 arrow on it, and you hit it with a Tainted Mythic Orb, you got something like a 40% chance to, at the time I'm recording this video, get yourself a 100 Divine Orb quiver. This is a pretty lucrative thing to do. Now, I do think the market's going to equalize a bit on this. I think you'll see a situation where Bloodstained Fossils and Mythic Orbs go up, and +1 arrow poised prisms come down in price, there'll be some sort of new equilibrium point that's reached. But at the moment, we're very far from equilibrium. And so this is something that is definitely very lucrative if you're looking to make yourself a bit of currency and you're okay with 1% odds to get something like 300 times the cost of your inputs back. Of course, this is all going to require you to start picking up those quivers in maps, primal arrow quivers, add them onto your filter if they're not there already. They're the most important base to have there in current PathOfExile 1. In a number of ways, you can see them as being like Stellar Amulet bases are in PathOfExile 2, the ones that can have a Chance Orb applied to them there, because even though the chances of hitting an Astromentus in that game are pretty low, they're not zero, and there's definitely people that have made a very large number of mirrors out of chasing exactly that outcome. Anyways, that's what Bloodstained Fossils do, that's why they're important now, and it's also what to do if you don't want to spend that much currency on Bloodstained Fossils. You can just replace Vaal Orbs with them, but your odds drop by a factor of 4. The key thing is picking up those Primal Arrow Quivers whenever you're mapping, anywhere that you're running content that is at least level 75, but ideally level 80 plus, because then not only do you get +1 arrow as an option, but you also get +1 chain as an option. It's nowhere near as valuable, but it does increase the average value that you get for every Bloodstained Fossil or every Vaal Orb that you apply. I'm going to leave it there. May your tainted Mythic Orbs have the results you deserve.